Good morning. Good morning. Happy Thursday. Welcome to our Legacy Ed News. I'm Dr. Selma Bartholomew, Dr. B here, wishing you a great start to your Thursday. Thank you so much for joining us for our Legacy Ed News. As you know, we try to get you caught up on some of the latest education news, as well as address some of the hot topics in the news. So first, let me ask you and say thank you for hitting the like and the subscribe button and the bell so you'll receive any notifications about any upcoming events. As we get into this topic today, I want you to know that the Dr. Selma B Show will air on Thursday, October 28th in Manhattan Neighborhood Network. And the topic is actually related to something I'm going to be talking about today, which is the New York City dismantling gifted and talented education and what Mayor DiBlasio don't want parents of color to know. So that's my topic for today. But first, let me just get into giving you some of the latest news. And once again, thank you for joining us. Call a friend. And yes, you can add comments below. So my first Legacy Ed News, I want to do congratulations to the Montgomery Public School District, to specifically Macmillan International Academy, and they were named a Blue Ribbon School in Montgomery, and they're only one of 5 schools in Alabama with that distinction. And for those who are just joining us, so that you know, the U.S. Department of Education names Blue Ribbon schools each year as a recognition of academic performance based on the school's ability to close achievement gaps among subgroups. I think this is also noteworthy because it's a special congratulations to Dr. Ann Roy Moore, who's the superintendent of Montgomery Public Schools. And she's been noted for really leading the change of closing the achievement gap and having a plan in terms of improvement in a school district that serves students of color, but also really looking ahead to the future. So congratulations again to Macmillan International Academy. Some quick notes in Texas. So this past Monday was Columbus Day, Italian American Day, and also noted as Indigenous American Day. So the University of Texas at El Paso has approved a formal acknowledgement that recognizes that the campus resides on Indigenous lands. And so kudos to Professor Jeffrey Shepard, who's chair of the history department there, who kind of led and championed this discussion with the community. And so stay tuned. I'll let you know any other updates as we do next week, Legacy Ed News. And so once again, if you're just joining us, thank you for joining us. It's Thursday, it's Legacy Ed News. I'm Dr. B, Dr. Bartholomew, and excited to have this opportunity to continue our conversation with you as this school year unfolds. One more note on an international piece. There is in England and throughout the British system, for those who don't know, it's very test driven. They have all of these exams, A exams, A-level exams, B-level exams. So right now there's a discussion around what they call B-Tech vocational exams, and a plan to maybe scrap those exams. And there is some discussion and debate around the fact that these exams had created a pathway for students to transition and to be able to get vocational training and then to be able to transition to a university work. And so I'm going to try to see if we can find an expert on this to maybe come and join us on one of our Legacy Ed News to talk about it and to talk about the implications for diverse communities in the British system and throughout the British system. So if you're in the West Indies, if you're in some parts of Africa and you then have this A-level and B-level exams, what are the implications for work? What are the implications for ending historical poverty if these exams and these qualifications are now being scrapped after maybe 2 or 3 years of implementation? All right, so welcome back. This is Dr. B. Well, welcome again to our Legacy Ed News. My topic and discussion for today, which I'm going to address, is in New York City, as you know, one of our largest school systems in the US. Mayor Bill DiBlasio this week announced that they have dismantled and redesigned the Gifted and Talented Education program. It was it is certainly representative of the fact that the G&T programs, he has noted, serves mainly white parents, Asian parents, and does not represent the diversity of New York City schools. And so they have now launched Brilliant. And so what does that mean? So certainly there were parents on the steps of City Hall this week protesting, parents whose children who are part of the gifted and talented education. So this work certainly hinges on Brown versus Board of Education, right? 1954, fighting for saying that separate was not equal. But be careful a little bit, because he's certainly using the banner of equity to say that the gifted and talented programs are not serving children of color, and they were not. And certainly, how would a child get into gifted and talented? Well, they would go and get evaluated by a psychologist who would then say, oh, wow, you have met a particular score, and so we're going to recommend you for a GNT program. But the real issue to me, the deeper issue, is equity doesn't mean all. And so the rhetoric now is, okay, we're going to have a Brilliant NYC, and all students will have access to this curriculum. And this is now going to fill the void for gifted and talented to have access to GNT for all students, or to have students in classrooms where they can feel like that they are nurtured and that they are enriched and developed curious minds. So I raised the question because the reality is, if there was a subgroup of students who were benefiting from gifted and talented education, and those parents who took to protesting at City Hall, the real reason is why. Why does GNT programs work? Well, the reality is the research says that class size is what matters. So if you're in a gifted and talented classroom and you've got 10, 12, maybe even 15 students to a class, how wonderful is that for a teacher to be able to get to know you, to build a relationship with you, and to educate you, right? And so, yeah, every parent wants to think that their child is special, and all children are. But the reality is environment matters. And so what I would question for parents of color that we should be advocating for is, why not make an effort to truly reduce class size, especially for children who are coming in with significant needs, right? Children who spent the night in a homeless shelter, children who may have come to school without breakfast, children who are experiencing, violence at home, plus all children. The research says that when you reduce class size, that it benefits children. And so I don't want to fall into that rhetoric to make you think that all of a sudden your classroom is going to be a brilliant classroom if they're not going to put the systems and the structures and the money and the resources that they need to train the teachers, and to give them what they need in order to be successful. And so most parents don't know that your child is sitting in a classroom with 25, 28, 30 kids. And yes, principals work really hard to try to reduce the number of students in the classroom. But if you check out my Legacy Ed News from last week on Why No Remote Learning, I talked about the fact that the number of students in a classroom is about money. And so you cannot just open up a classroom and say, I want to make 15 kids in a classroom. You have to have the budget in order to do that. And so our schools are tapped because resources are spread across charter schools. If they didn't make their enrollment, if they thought they were going to have 200 kids and now they have 150 kids, well, now they're in a budget deficit. So these are the things that I would hope that that our next mayor would tackle, instead of Mayor DiBlasio noting that we are doing something and championing something for all children. How is it championed? When you haven't necessarily addressed the inequities, you haven't addressed the challenges that our teachers are facing and that our students are facing every single day in the classroom. So I'm not falling for the rope-a-dope. So I am being very opinionated about this, and I'm okay with that. I think it's important that you, as parents, as I've mentioned, our children don't have unions, but they have parents. And part of this goal with Legacy Ed News is to keep you informed. And so if you're a parent and you're thinking now that that your child will now get access to a gifted and talented curriculum, Well, even that is a question mark, because when they say curriculum, it usually means that they've made another purchase by a white-owned company, because Black and brown businesses don't get access to be able to sell our resources across the system and are systematically and historically denied access. So what exactly is this curriculum that they will be now pushing in the lower grades for students? So I want you to think critically as a parent when you hear it. The omission of facts is also something that you need to know. So the first fact, like I noted, is how many students will be in those classrooms. And so if your student is in a classroom with 25, 30, even 20 students is a lot. And so the reason why the G&T programs are successful is those parents who are savvy to be able to get their kids tested, get an evaluator who's going to rate them, right, gifted and talented. And then they've gotten access to programs for years with small classrooms, with resources like water tables in their classrooms, sand, the things that kids need, the manipulatives that they need in order to play. In our classrooms, in our local neighborhoods, water tables were removed. Sand tables are hard to find. Why? Well, because you're trying to push more kids into one classroom. So think about it, send a comment, let me know what you think regarding the dismantling of the program. And once again, I don't want it to be about, I want you to think that equity is not about all. Equity is about looking at the needs of a child and meeting those needs. So in other words, if we're having breakfast, all people don't need coffee. Suppose, coffee doesn't work for me, but that's really the approach that they're trying to use under the lens of equity. And so I want to be able to have you think about it, and certainly please do add a comment below. And I thank you again for joining our Legacy Ed News Thursday mornings at 8:50 a.m. Look forward to connecting with you again. And thank you for hitting the like and the subscribe button. And yes, you can leave a comment below about what do you think about the dismantling of the gifted and talented programs, but most importantly, what are the issues that your children are dealing with in their classroom? And do you think that now that they've said this was separate and we want equal, well, to me, the equal part was we definitely want to be able to ask for smaller classrooms. So when will we get that in a system that has continuously denied access and denied resources to children of color? I'm wishing you a wonderful day. And once again, thank you again for joining me for Legacy Ed News.